Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you may be listening to us from on this big, beautiful planet we call Earth. This is Michael Cross here with another edition of Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV Productions, where we strongly encourage you to wake up and leave the matrix and, see the world for what it really is. Throw away the mainstream media. You got to throw it away. You've got to, listening to the mainstream media is like wanting to be healthy, and so when you're wanting to avoid an illness, you instead walk into a quarantine situation in which everyone's got this illness, and then you think, oh, it won't affect me. Well, it does. It was really interesting. And then I'm going to get into this election coming up on Tuesday. My daughter came up to me and she said, she received a notice. She's on a lot of social media, and she received something from one of the big networks, one of the liberal networks, one of those networks that just seems to be spouting nothing more than propaganda for Hillary Clinton recently. And won't name it by name. It's just that, it seems to just be total, Hillary Clinton propaganda. And she said that it had something that was trying to tell you what are the characteristics of media that you should trust. And this bothered her because she was thinking, well, this is a media corporation trying to basically tell you what you should and should not trust from their competitors. Isn't that like a car factory trying to tell you that essentially you can trust the car with their label on it, but if you don't see that label on the car, then you shouldn't trust it? I mean, kind of the same thing. Anyway, seriously, if we had fair and balanced media in this country that strove to at least try to show both sides to every issue, or at least several different sides to every issue, and try to show you the good and the bad and the ugly of every candidate. And yes, every single one of them has something good and something bad and something ugly, some of them way more ugly than others. But the thing is that you would really, really want the media to do this. I think this election right now would be hands down Donald Trump. I really do. I think 75% of the people would be voting for Trump if they had all the facts. And this is not to say that he's because he's a Republican or something like that. You got to remember the Republican establishment was pretty much solidly against Trump when he was running in the primaries. And then I hear people say, well, I'm voting third party. I'm voting for this CIA dude, because he's not part of the establishment. Excuse me, Trump is the one that's not part of the establishment. All right? Well, you better look at the facts when you're talking establishment and realize what establishment really means. Okay? And believe me, in this election, it's establishment versus non-establishment. This essentially is just like what a liberal commentator and documentarian recently stated, that he thought that Trump will win because this will be pretty much like the little guy giving the big FU to the big guys, the establishment. But let's just point out what would be the consequences of voting for each of the candidates that are running. And first, I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to talk about the third-party candidates. First of all, Gary Johnson. Yeah, I wonder if he knows where Aleppo is right now, or if he's learned a few world leaders. It's a wasted vote. Seriously, it is a wasted vote. I mean, if you take a look at the issues, and if you want to see what a true libertarian is, look at Ron Paul. You compare Ron Paul and Gary Johnson, there's a huge difference, okay? I think if you really want a libertarian that, you're not going to elect a libertarian, and if you truly want limited government right now, if you look at Trump and you look at Hillary, come on. You got one person who is going to really strive to cut back on government waste and so forth. And you got another person that, she's been part of the establishment for all of her life, essentially. Do you really expect her to really cut back on things? So essentially, yeah, you can vote for Gary Johnson, but the sad part is, if you would normally, had it not been for Gary Johnson, if you normally would have voted for the Republican candidate, even if you didn't agree with him 100%, then that is a vote for Hillary. Okay? If you're one of those people out there, when they do the polls and they find out what percentage of people want to reduce government or want to have more freedom for small business especially, and so forth, and not to have government intrude on their lives, personal decisions and so forth, then, you really need then to consider that a vote for Johnson will be a vote for Hillary. Okay? It's one less of those limited government type voters out there that would normally be considered secure for the Republican candidate. And I will note, a few years ago, the Senate was taken over by the Democrats. And it was because in several key races, you had candidates that were running third parties that pulled votes away from Republicans. You look it up. Okay? You don't want that to happen this time. Now let's take a look at Jill Stein. Some people would say, well, Jill Stein's sort of the, Gary Johnson, except she's from the Green Party. And you could argue that a person that doesn't like Hillary, that is like a Bernie Sanders voter, if they vote for Stein rather than Hillary, that's taking a vote from Hillary. And in a sense, that's true. It's true. I will say this, though, for Jill Stein. She knows her stuff. I've looked at her speeches. I've looked at her website. I've looked at things that she has said and done, and I'm impressed. Okay, I think she's a good person. I think that ultimately, she has ethics. And that's something that, in this election, oh my gosh, I don't think too many of us right now are thinking, well, Hillary's the candidate of ethical government. I mean, you've got FBI probes. Wouldn't that be weird? Wouldn't that be weird if Hillary actually won the election on Tuesday and actually wound up getting in trouble with the FBI, that she could be, at the same time her inauguration is supposed to take place, she might actually be having to appear before hearings and investigations and so forth. I mean, is that a good thing for the United States to be going through? Is it? And then on top of this, well, on top of that, you've got Kaine. You want Kaine as, your president if she gets thrown out? Think about that long and hard. Now, then we've got this McMullen guy. And I'm really happy to see that the polls are showing that people are starting to find out. He seemed to be the guy that could actually threaten the election, because he might pull a lot of Mormon voters away from Trump. And I'll tell you this much, a lot of Mormons love Trump, okay? I got a lot of Mormons in my social media who love Trump. But there are some that feel that on one or two issues they don't like him, or and I'm not joking about this, you've got some, they're like, well, his wife posed naked, when she was a model. Okay, well, how many models don't? I mean, I think most do, but the thing is that, it's an issue with some people. The thing is that many of these people voted for Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz is now out there campaigning for Trump. And I think that's causing a lot of those Mormon voters that people were scared that could sway Idaho and Utah and Arizona, most notably, over to Hillary. I don't think that's going to happen. I have a lot of Mormons in my social media who were very anti-Trump. I mean, they were on that whole Glenn Beck bandwagon and everything. And they're saying now, okay, some of them have already voted for Trump, and some of them are like, okay, I'm going to vote for Trump. Okay, yep, the only people I have that are actually Mormon that are negative to Trump are a couple Swedish people in my social media that are Mormon, and they don't seem to like Trump. But if you were to read the Swedish media, you'd find that there's never anything good said about Trump, pretty much. So it's not surprising. But anyway, I think the CIA guy in Utah is not going to be the person that's going to get elected. And by the way, I just wanted to note, I've had some people, because they've read the description of my 5th book that just recently came out this week, actually, Freedom from Conscience, The Price of Power. And in it, one of the main characters is a Mormon CIA, retired CIA. I don't know that much about McMullen's background, but in my book, the CIA guy is a retired assassin for the CIA. And he's helping the main character, who is, even though she's very ethical, she's also psychopathic and has a history of being a serial killer. And, she's made it to Congress and starting to get into starts getting invited and then eventually sucked into a secret society that, starts to exercise control over her. There is nothing in that is based on any living person, out there, okay? Certainly not this McMullen guy. He was not an inspiration at all. The description of him is nothing like him. I mean, for one thing, McMullen, he's 40 and unmarried, whereas the character is retired. In my book, he's retired and has a large family, and so forth. But anyway, McMullen, I don't think you have too much to worry about. But if a vote for McMullen, again, is just like, if you were normally a values voter and you were going to vote for someone, usually the Republican Party and so forth, and you were to vote for McMullen instead of Trump, then that is a vote for Hillary. Okay? Because the only thing that could happen in this, I know there's this crazy idea, and again, I think it's just thrown out there. I don't think anyone even believes it could happen any more than, I don't know, the space aliens are going to come down and solve all of our problems. The the idea that neither Hillary or Trump gets enough to win, and then you get this guy who wins a couple states and becomes the kingpin, or something, and then you get into the Congress, and maybe he actually winds up getting chosen. I personally think it'd probably be Paul Ryan who would be chosen by Congress to be the president. But the very, 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 very unlikely scenario, extremely unlikely. And so him, I wouldn't vote for. And if you're voting for any of these other third-party candidates that maybe actually pretty good guys, they may come across pretty good. They may have very solid conservative values. But again, they're pulling off a few thousand votes here and a few thousand there, and the media is not going to pay attention. The only thing that's going to happen is if you subscribe to one of their newsletters, you're going to receive, so-and-so got 20,000 votes or something like that. It's not going to matter, okay? It's just not. Now we get into the actual election itself between Trump and Hillary. And I think the number one issue here for those who want a limited government, they want First Amendment freedom, they want Second Amendment freedom. In fact, you could say even 10th Amendment freedom, and so forth. The rights that are reserved for the federal, the rights of the states in the 10th Amendment, the things that the federal government is not given responsibility for, the states are responsible for. If you want that, ultimately, I think you better be, thinking about what a Supreme Court would look like depending on whether Hillary or Trump is the president. Now, Trump has said he will appoint, now he has stated this, okay, he's already stated this, that he will appoint conservative judges. And what I mean by conservative are judges that will interpret the Constitution along the lines of the late Anthony Scalia. And because of that, then that's where this kind of power, I've heard people say, well, I voted for George Bush and we still have this and this and this that happened. Of course, because you still had a balance on the Supreme Court that was not quite where you would need it to switch or to confirm a lot of social policy stance. Now, if Hillary gets in, now think about this. Hillary would follow Barack Obama. Obama's had 8 years to appoint members to the Supreme Court, which he's done, and members of the federal courts that you never hear about usually. But they're extremely important because they make more decisions than the Supreme Court does. And the Supreme Court will only review a percentage of those decisions. So federal judges are extremely important. And again, 8 years of appointments to fill retiring members. Some of them retired after, Bill Clinton appointed them. There's some that are still in from the days of George Bush, Daddy George Bush. And of course, the ones that are in from George Bush and, the one that was in before Obama. And the next person who's in the presidency, whether it be Hillary or Trump, they're going to get a chance to either fill up almost the remaining positions out there with liberal judges, or start appointing conservative judges and maybe even bringing more of a balance back. You got to remember, this is a game of mortality. It's like when Anthony Scalia died, there were liberals that were going, well, right, yeah, this sounds terrible, but they were, yeah, Anthony Scalia's dead, now the court's going to change. The Republicans held back on confirming Barack Obama's appointment. Now, if Hillary gets elected, I venture to say she will either appoint the guy that Obama put forth. Think about that. What that's going to do to your gun rights there. Read up on that. And also, you could actually have Hillary Clinton appoint Barack Obama to the court. That's right. Barack Obama is 55 years old. He could be on the court 30 or 40 years. Okay? And that's a very strong possibility. So, the courts are the deciding factor. And I think the liberals really understand this. Liberal people seem to understand more than conservatives the way the courts work, because liberals, most of your people that really get into political science tend to be kind of left of center. Not all, okay? But there seems to be a majority. It's just like when it comes to artwork. Most artists are left of center. And it has nothing to do with artistic people. It's something in the genes of an artistic person that causes them to be left of center. They just tend to be a little bit more, wanting to break new ground and do things. And that sort of gets associated with being more on the liberal side. And often if someone who's a singer, you see this a lot of times in music, you get a rock singer who starts out as being the leader of like a Christian rock band, and pretty soon they are, they start getting big in the industry, and so much for all that Christian rock that they used to produce. Okay? So you get this kind of thing that's taking place out there in the society at large, where the conservative people often don't realize just how much power the court has. They tend to think, okay, the president's in charge, the Congress is in charge, making laws, and they don't realize the court can actually strike all those laws down. Okay? So, again, many conservative people, they have degrees in things like business or education, in areas often not associated with liberalism. And so, tends to be that more left of center people understand the power the courts have, and many left of center people who really do not like Hillary Clinton at all are going to vote for her. I'm a member of a whole bunch of different groups that people have added me to, friends that are liberal, and I see the posts they make, and it's just like, oh my gosh, you may hate Hillary, but please, the person that's going to appoint the next Supreme Court justices do you really want it to be Donald Trump? They understand it. Conservatives should understand it too, that, Hillary has made it clear she wants to restrict guns. Okay, her followers are usually a little bit more honest. You can just go in there and look at some of the YouTube videos, especially people that might have been at the Democratic National Convention, delegates who were asked, kind of on the side, hey, how do you feel about gun control? And the ones for Hillary, you just look it up. Just look it up. And the thing is that politicians speak like politicians. And every time Donald Trump, during those debates, all three of the debates, would bring up a really good point, Hillary would just give that big old grin that she has and dismiss it. You could tell she was angry, but she would smile and then dismiss it. Smile, shake her head, dismiss. Smile, shake her head, dismiss. And she didn't answer the question. She just kind of went into something else. She did the same thing with Bernie really well. Trump, she didn't get quite as much away with it, because Trump just went in there basically the second and third debate realizing that everything was stacked against him anyway with the way the media was doing this. And he just made the issue, he was asked a question, he answered the way he wanted to answer it. He made his own questions during those things. And again, we get into this issue that some people have with Trump when it comes to, marriage and fidelity and all these kinds of issues. And I think maybe what we should actually be thinking about in this is, are either candidate really all that special when it comes to that? Take a look at the way Hillary treated the people who would try to bring forth things about Bill. At the very least, Hillary would have been an enabler for Bill whenever he got in trouble. Okay, so it's, trying to portray her as a victim, I don't think is really genuine. And, I've noticed something here that a lot of times feminists will say, and rightly so. Some gal is assaulted and she's brought, into court as a witness against the perpetrator. And then the defense attorney will bring up stuff about her past and so forth. That's just not right. Okay? That's not right when you're dealing with what's going on at the moment. And so examine that very carefully. Now, let's take a look at the other issue that I think is very important. Oh my gosh, this is so important. This is almost as equal to Supreme Court, if maybe it's even more so. I mean, it's more so, and that's war. I mean, I've seen a little bit from people that are for Trump when it comes to dealing with the war issue, and basically saying that, hey, look, we got a situation in which Hillary, if she gets elected, we have a chance of winding up in World War III. Take a look. I mean, have you ever seen a situation where two cats are, staring down each other? The hair's up on both their backs. The tail's up. The claws are starting to show. And, that there's nothing you can do at that moment. You can yell at them or whatever, and nothing's going to stop them from fighting. And this is what Hillary is leading us into when it comes to Russia. She's leading us into a situation in which, whether it be Syria or Ukraine, we could actually wind up with World War III. And the thing is that her saying that, that maybe you'd have military responses for cyber attacks, and the idea that she thinks that her emails were exposed by the Russians. I mean, that's what she claimed during the debates. And yet there's no evidence of it. Zero. And, you talk about military response to computer hacking. I mean, how are you going to tell whether the person hacking the computer from Moscow is someone from the Kremlin or just some smart 16-year-old kid who's deciding that he doesn't like the U.S. government system and wants to hack into the government computers? This is a very, very dangerous situation. And then you got these things about no-fly zones in Syria. Could we remember the fact that whether you love him or hate him or you're somewhere in between, Bashar Assad is the elected leader of Syria? Now, we could talk about elections. Of course, we could talk about elections here in America. I saw this thing that one of the few people that's still posting pro-Hillary stuff in my social media. He had this caption that shows this soldier in World War II. And this, it's just kind of a figure of a soldier in World War II, not a specific, saying that how can people be thinking about voting for voting for Donald Trump? I went over and died fighting a man that sounded like Donald Trump. No, I don't think I've ever heard Donald Trump get up and start screaming German. And also, I really hate these kinds of references to Hitler, since Donald Trump's family's Jewish. It's really strange. But anyway, the thing that I find that is really funny in all of this is that someone responded saying, this is disingenuous. My parents, my father fought in World War II, and I don't think he'd be voting for Hillary. And then someone responded saying, yeah, but if he lives in Chicago, if he's dead and was buried in Chicago, he'll be voting for Hillary. and I also saw some other stuff out there that said, in recent analysis of absentee votes, we're finding that most World War I and Spanish American War veterans are solidly behind Hillary Clinton. I actually had one person respond to one of those saying that, what, this can't be. How come, and there's like someone else responded saying, well, excuse me, it's a joke. There are no surviving World War I veterans or especially Spanish American War veterans. They'd be like 140 years old. But the thing is, they may be still voting for Hillary in absentee votes. We don't know. But the thing is that the situation now is such that if we want to preserve the lives of the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of those World War II vets, I think they might consider that Donald Trump is the best person to vote for. He's the least likely to get the United States into war with Russia. And then at the same time, we have Democrats going, look, Trump and Putin are in some sort of conspiracy. Now they're adding the FBI. Trump, Putin, and the FBI are in a conspiracy. I guess that's, it was before it was Alex Jones and some big green frog or something that was part of the conspiracy too. But the thing is that how can you have Trump and Putin in some sort of conspiracy, and at the same time Trump's the one that's going to get us in a war with Russia? But at the same time, Hillary has actually threatened the Russians. Hillary has called the Russian leader Hitler, and people are thinking that's the one we should vote for because there will be peace. I mean, is peace the idea, and equality, the idea that your daughters and or granddaughters may be drafted into a war? Not just your grandsons and sons. It used to be that, if you had maybe a couple daughters and a couple sons, you actually realized that at least your daughters would survive if there was a major war. It sounds terrible, but you don't want to lose all your kids. And now it could be you lose everyone. Now, of course, we know that the sons and daughters of people like Hillary, her daughter and so forth, we know that they would never have to go to war and be on the front lines, of course. Most of the people saying that we need equality and we need to draft women are women that are above draft age and don't have kids. Think about that for a moment. All right? They're above draft age and they don't have children. They never did have children. And they support a draft. Come on, please, 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 please. We don't, first of all, a draft would be meaningless. You get into a war with Russia or China or whatever, and it's going to go nuke. And if it goes nuke, you can have all those soldiers out there and poof, they're gone. They're vaporized. And probably along with most of our major cities. So it wouldn't really make any difference. This is an election that you better hope you get another Ronald Reagan style person in, such as Donald Trump. All right? If you get Hillary in there, you might want to, I'll bet you that sales on prepping items will skyrocket if Hillary's elected. I think they may even go up if Trump's elected because people may think that some of the elite might try to punish the American people and they might start, transferring funds here, there, and everywhere or whatever and actually cause a problem for the U.S. economy, which would then be blamed on Trump. But nevertheless, the young people, and people, that are draft age, they, I think that the other issue, I want to make this transition into another issue here. The other issue that's very important is the economy. And right now, I've noticed what the prices of just rent in most cities is nowadays. This is why so many young people are still living at home. The price of rent and, of course, the price of buying a home is through the roof. The jobs that are available to young people, or as what, Guy Standing, I interviewed him a while back, the guy that was the originator of the term the precariat, the young people who just they're not integrated into this economy. This globalization thing has kind of gutted a lot of jobs. Now, sure, there are jobs out there for young people. If you're good looking, you can go into porn. If you're healthy, you can go into the military. Being somewhat facetious right now, or just trying to be satirical, but at the same time, there's a certain amount of truth to it. There is a certain amount of truth to the idea that the availability of jobs is very limited for younger people now. You get people graduating from college with $100,000 of debt because their parents weren't rich enough to pay for their education and they weren't poor enough to be able to get grants. So they had to take loans. They've got all these loans with interest and they are having to pay those back. At the same time, the only jobs they can get is maybe delivering pizza. Well, actually, that would be a good job because you deliver pizza, you get tips. But if you're just having to work as at a McDonald's or Burger King or something back there flipping burgers, you're not going to be able to, be able to pay rent on your own place, be paying back on a student loan. And what's that doing for your job prospects if you graduate with a degree in, let's say, sociology or anthropology or something like that, and you're not jumping out there into the workforce? Or if you just have a 4-year degree in many areas and you didn't get to do graduate school, a 4-year degree in most of your sciences won't get you anywhere. So we don't have that dynamic economy that we used to, in which someone could say, you know what, I'll work at the factory until I get some other job, and then when I get the other job, and there was this kind of social mobility that existed in the 1970s and even to a degree in the 1980s. But when you got to the late 80s, the 90s, and after the Bill Clinton signed those trade deals with Asia, and also got rid of Glass-Steagall and some of these other things that regulated the financial sector, that's when things just started going down. And we do have a situation in which, maybe a lot of grandparents out there that are living on pensions, and they retired from jobs that were pretty stable, pretty good, and they still remember that in those days you could go out, 1950s and 60s, and you could get yourself work and stuff, and if you were ambitious, you could make it. Well, that does not exist in the United States anymore. Sorry, it doesn't. And so we're living in a time period that we need a change. Now, if we get Hillary, at the very most, we're just going to get same old. Unless, of course, you get yourself a job with the Clinton Foundation or something like that. But ultimately, it's the same old. And you know what? What do you have to look forward to? Someday you'll get a home when your grandparents die, and maybe you'll get it willed to you. Fat chance on that. A lot of times when someone gets to like the last couple months of their life, they have to go into some pretty expensive sort of care. And often what happens is they take out a loan or there's a deal made that the home becomes the payment. And then when they die, the home is then sold by the banks, and to pay off all the money from the that was incurred, taking care of the grandparent when they were at their last few months of life. And I've seen this happen many times, in which grandchildren get zero, nothing. Okay, the estate, what that person worked for all their life, is gone. And so think about that. I'm not trying to discourage young people. I think people should try to find ways to go out there and get started. And, a lot of them are avoiding marriage. And maybe what people should do is actually get married. Try to pull your resources together and then start families. The days of, I've got to be financially secure and all this kind of stuff, it's gone. Unless you plan on being financially secure when you're 50, and if you're a woman, that's going to be past your childbearing years. And if you're a guy, some guys can pull it off, but getting yourself a wife that's still childbearing age when you're 50 is somewhat difficult, unless you got really good money, or you got really good looks, or you got really high intelligence. You gotta have to stand out in some way to do that. So ultimately, we have a financial system that the rich are getting richer. No, the super rich are getting even super richer. The rich are getting richer. The upper middle class is kind of stagnant. They're kind of holding their ground. And the middle class and the working class and their descendants are going down. Okay, they are on like a downward spiral, and this is why I think many of that group are voting for Donald Trump. When he says, let's make America great again, and Hillary says it's already great, that really sends a message to those people that Hillary thinks everything's fine. Sure, she's a multi-millionaire. Everything's great for Hillary. Everything's great for her daughter. Look up Chelsea Clinton. Look up apartment Chelsea Clinton. You know, those kinds of things. Look up the houses that Hillary has. And property and money and all this other stuff. I mean, you know, as Donald Trump says, Donald Trump had to provide items that people wanted in order to make the money he has made during his life. Hillary and her family, Bill, have been in government. And was it Truman who said that, you know, you can't be honest and make a lot of money in government? And, you know, look for yourself. Look for yourself. Now, again, the infrastructure of the United States is deteriorating. If you've ever been on the roads of China or Russia, you'll see that they are so much more modern than what we have now in the United States. And if the infrastructure, 20 years from now, if the infrastructure is totally falling apart, only the rich have money. The poor, they're on welfare, and the middle class has been decimated. Who's paying the bills? Who's going to pay the bills? The rich can find ways to put their money in other areas where the bills aren't going to be paid by them. And that's not a very good future. Okay? At the worst, it's Hunger Games. At the best, it's, I don't know, Mexico City 20 years ago. So, you know, where you got the elite, and then you've got a small middle class, and then you got lots of poor people. Is this the America of the future? I hope not. But then you can't vote for someone who just says, let's have more of the same. Or let's do more of the bad things that got us there. And you can't run an economy on the war. Okay? A lot of this idea that, well, maybe Hillary will, you know, there'll be lots of good defense contracts and there'll be all this and this and this. This is something that is not going to lift up the economy in general. Making a tank has only the use of a tank. It doesn't get reused. It's not like if you make a car and then that car is something that is driven by its original owner and then sold perhaps to someone who's not such a, you know, they're not really wealthy enough to buy a new car, but they get this car, but then later when they get some money, they trade that car in, and then that car goes to some, you know, 16-year-old who's like wanting to impress the girls, so he gets this car, you know, as a, you know, from the money he saved up, you know, in working at a restaurant. Nowadays, maybe working with his dad, flipping burgers in a restaurant. But the thing is, a tank and military hardware doesn't have reuse. You build a cruise missile, 150 million, is that what they go for? You see those things firing off ships to hit targets, maybe, I don't know, in Yemen or something. Most people don't even know we're at war in Yemen. Can you believe that? You say, well, where is Yemen? They're like, oh, what? What's that? You know, I mean, we're at war so many places that people don't even know the names of the countries. And, you know, you fire one of those things off, most people don't make $1.5 million in their whole life. And there's it's gone. Blows up a building, you know, kills some people. But it doesn't give any positive economics for the United States. And certainly doesn't making us any friends over in Yemen. Okay? Just making enemies. And rightfully so. I mean, if your family gets killed by American hardware, you're not going to be going, "Yay, America," and waving a flag around. So the thing is that what we put into the military only provides a small amount of fluidity within the economy, and it's not used to improve the economy. Okay? A car, it puts people to work all over the place. The attendants that have to take care of it, the people at the car wash, the spare parts that you make, having to build roads, having to do this, 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 and this. It all helps in the long run to, really get used a lot. It's like the diagram you see of the cow. When a cow walks into a slaughterhouse, it gets totally used. There's hardly anything that comes out. Okay? They have a use for everything. Whether it's making candy out of the bone material, or fertilizer, or making, or grinding up what's left of the bones and using them for asphalt. There is something used, and the same with the car. But the military hardware doesn't do that. It doesn't have that kind of fluidity within the economy. You don't make a jet fighter and use it for other purposes within the U.S. economy, except as maybe a backdrop on some movie set or something like that. And so I would really, really discourage people from thinking, oh, well, if things go the way they are now, things are great. Because they're not. Okay? And it's not good for Black Americans. It's not good for white Americans. It's not good for Hispanic Americans. And we need to emphasize that. Black, white, Hispanic Americans. And not be doing this kind of breaking people apart and attacking like the Democrats do. The Democrats will come out and say, well, this group here should vote for this party, our party, because they're a certain color. Really? Is that not racist? Seems racist to me. If you're expecting a vote from someone because they're a certain race, they should be behaving or thinking a certain way, that seems like the ultimate in racism. That seems the ultimate, because it's a prejudice. You're prejudging that person and assuming that they must have to vote a certain way because of that look or that ethnicity or that race. And this is one problem I'm seeing in this election, is that there's this expectation thrown out by the Democrats. Now, Republicans, I'll say one thing. Trump has gone to black churches and he's spoken. He's actually spent time going into these kind of communities, and Republicans often avoid them. They stay out there in those middle-class neighborhoods. You really want to, think about the inroads that would be made if you had a presidential candidate who, as a Republican, instead of pulling 10% of the black vote, was able to pull 25. And then all of a sudden you started getting rising stars within the black community that were Republican. You don't think that is the ultimate in getting rid of a lot of the prejudice in the country, getting rid and really integrating people into the framework? So as a black American, you're not having to think, okay, well, if this party wins, I'm out. I'm going to be an outsider. And instead, you realize that you're going to have people within your own community that are going to be parts of the Republican Party. And the same goes for all minority groups, whether it's, even, Hispanics for sure, even gays and lesbians. I'll tell you this much. I think this Milo guy, oh gosh, I can't even pronounce his last name. I'm sorry. No, you just look up Milo. But I think he's done more to gain acceptance for the gay community, especially within the conservative movement, than anyone else I can think of. And with him rising up there, you're going to see more gay and lesbian people who feel connected to the Republican Party. I have in my social media, I have a couple of women who are lesbian and they are Trump supporters. I'm not sure about the stands one of them has, but one of them is very pro-life. And there is actually a lot of lesbian pro-life people. I mean, these kinds of issues, there's an overlap. I interviewed the guy from Pink Pistols a few weeks ago. You know, the many gay people are getting into gun ownership and protecting themselves from those who would do them harm, whether it's because of their sexual orientation or just because, well, you know, they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and someone wanted to do them harm, regardless of their sexuality. Okay, when some cop gets shot, you know, you hear about policemen getting killed. And I'm not pointing fingers at any organizations right now, but I think you know what organizations tend to not question the police, because the conservatives question the police and a lot of the police brutality that takes place, but actually just basically paint the whole police as evil or something. Those are the dangerous ones. Not the people who are saying we need to have more accountability within police departments and we need to do this, 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 and this. But the ones that are just like, we hate the cops, and go out and get them. When a cop gets killed, you don't know what their political party is. You don't know what their sexual orientation is. You don't know anything about them. And I venture to say, if you have all these cops, and, you know, you're going to have a variety of people that have been killed. And so ultimately, it is a good idea to have personal ownership of weapons and be able to protect yourself, be it from rape, be it from assault, robbery, people trying to kill you or something like that. And generally those people, when they come after you, they're not asking, hey, by the way, are you gay or straight, or are you a Democrat, are you Republican? They're not asking those questions. They're just coming at you. Okay? And so, yes, you need to have some sort of protection. And I would very much encourage people to consider that when voting in this election, because Hillary is not a friend of the Second Amendment. And I don't even think she's a friend of the First. You know, notice the way she's really come out against alternative media, trying to, you know, paint it all like a conspiracy, you know. And my understanding is when she made her comments about the vast right-wing conspiracy in the 90s, much of that was being directed against the rising conservative talk radio host and stuff like that. And there are things you could do. I am not joking. There are things the government could do to really stifle alternative media. There are so many things. There's ways that you could regulate the internet. You could come back with some sort of fairness doctrine on the internet, which pretty much would destroy alternative sources of media. You know, where you had to present both sides. Or maybe your side has to be presented a certain way that's acceptable. I mean, there are so many ways that this newfound ability to reach audiences, be it 10 people, be it 100, be it 1,000, be it 100,000, be it 100 million. This new media that is so popular amongst young people. Okay, you know, it is so interesting that when I hear young people asking questions about things that they have seen on the internet, I mean, my daughter has friends that are very well aware of what's going on in the world, more so than their parents, because they spend their time on the internet looking not just for, you know, the stupid stuff on, you know, pictures and silly memes and stuff like that, but they actually are spending time looking at serious news content. I remember I was watching a seminar, mostly young people, and The question was asked by the speaker, and they were trying to make a point. They said, how many of you read newspapers? And out of about 100 people that were there, about 4 raised their hands. And she said, okay, well, you see, that could be reported in the press as young people must not be informed anymore because they don't read newspapers. But then she rephrased the question. She said, how many of you use the internet to look up sources of news? Almost every one of them raised their hands. Now that proves that the traditional newspaper, even their websites, are no longer relevant in young people's minds. And if you want that to continue, it's best to vote for someone like Trump. Because Hillary may try to find ways. I'm not saying she would, but I'm just going by if the way that she seems to think everything is you're either, she's like Bush in that sense. You're either with us or you're against us. And if you think about the big networks, except for Fox, they're with Hillary. The other, the alternative media, for the most part, it's not with Hillary. And, you don't think that if Hillary's elected, she's not going to be going over and analyzing what can be done about this? You don't think there's going to be, planning sessions and working with even Republicans who don't like what's going on? The Republicans I'm talking about. Okay, some of them ran against Trump in the primaries. You don't think that they might find it very comfortable to get rid of the alternative media? Okay? Because they're not treated so well by alternative media. So therefore, if you want to keep your media, think about what Obama said about your health care. If you like your health care, you can keep it. Well, you found out that wasn't the case. Now, with Hillary, I don't think she's even said that if you like your alternative media, you can keep it. So I would be very, very wary of that. Now, when it comes essentially finally to the future, I really do think that we do need a new direction. Trump may not have all the answers, and he may not even be able to do the things that he said he wants to do. But we know that he wants to do those things. We know that someone who says they don't, someone that's very comfortable with the way things are now, is not going to do those things. She's going to ignore that stuff. So, when you're talking to people right now, this is Saturday. You still have several days before the election. I saw a poll out there somewhere that said that 40% of Hillary supporters are not totally sure they're going to vote for Hillary. You need to reach those. The 40% you should be aiming for. Friends, family, coworkers, so forth. You got to get them thinking. Get them doubting. Get them thinking, well, wait a minute, do I really want to vote for her? You may not convince them to vote for Trump, but get them to be thinking about not voting for Hillary. To where they're thinking, I just don't want to go out and vote. It's raining outside today. Forget it. It's too much trouble. Because I'll guarantee you the Trump supporters, you've got those kind of people too, and you've got to reinforce them. But you've also got to realize, I think most of them are going to go out and vote. They are going to get up and they're going to vote. Whether it's raining, whether it's sunny, whether it's snowing, they're going to do it. Okay? They've been told they're deplorables. They've been mocked. And this is their way, if nothing else, of saying, yeah, here's the finger. And they're going to do it. Anyway, that's all the time we have right now. I hope you all get out and vote. Take care, and I'll talk to you next week here on